Our guest and partner this evening is Egberto Willies, who wears many hats in local and national politics. He's contributing editor for the Daily Kos, host of KPFT's Politics Done Right, CNN iReport Pundit of the Week, and much, much more. Egberto Willies, welcome back to Open Journal.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, glad to see you. It's nice. You do both host and guest really
host
well.
And guest. Oh, I'm the guest now.
It's nice. So it's nice to sort of see what you're doing on KPFT and have always been really active online with sort of stoking the narrative and keeping it going beyond the building. So as you host Politics Done Right on KPFT 90.1, my first question to you is, how's Politics Done Right and not wrong?
Somebody told me when I named it Politics Done Right, I made a mistake. They said I should have named it Politics Done Left. The problem is I had already had all the stuff done Politics Done Right. So I want people to read right meaning correct, as opposed to right meaning the political right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I think after listening to the first sentence that I say on my show, they always know it's not politics done on the right side.
It becomes real clear, real obvious, real fast.
Yes. So it becomes real clear, real fast that Politics Done Right is a show for not for progressives. It's a progressive show with the expectation of bringing in folks from all sides. Because you know what we notice, that most Americans are in fact progressives. They don't say it, but they are.
Yeah, knowledge changes a lot of things, right? And that's the beauty of public radio. And what you do is that, sometimes we are certain things because we don't know enough to know the bigger story and the bigger picture. So you also have a political blog, EgbertoWillies.com. That's give us a taste of what they'll find when they get there. Okay. What is the premise?
EgbertoWillies.com is my what I call my news blog. In other words, things that happens that I think should be of interest to the community at large. That's where I post those blogs. I would either read several news stories and then try to form a narrative out of the news stories that I find. And the reason I do that is, as we know, most people don't really have the time to read very long articles and that sort of thing. So my goal is to read these articles, try to get a narrative out of it that can be easily digested by folks who are on the run. So if you'd see my articles, my 700-word article or 1,000-word article ideally will encompass several other 700 words articles, sort of compressed in a way that kind of give people values. Now, you also try to do things to entertain folks a bit, because the way it works on the internet is, if you don't also have something entertaining or a clickbaity kind of a thing to bring them in, you have a lonely existence on the internet with everybody trying to do things. So I try to do two things at the same time, and that is, one, to digest stories into easily understandable things. Secondly, most importantly, be truthful and drag the nuts and bolts out of the story. How, in my humble opinion, to try to make lives better for folks after they're done.
That's really strong.
Which is why you're a perfect fit for KPFT.
That's what we do,
right? Yeah. That's what we're all about here at KPFT. So I was thinking, Egberto, you are a writer, a producer. Is it acceptable or correct for me to just refer to you and your work with this blog and things like that as kind of creating a progressive Reader's Digest?
I would hope so. I'm a bona fide progressive, and I'm trying to build a repertoire of progressive information and be one of the many progressive sources out there. I mean, your program and the programs of Mike Honig and the program of all the other people that we have here at the station, hundreds. That's what we're trying to do. I mean, we hope to have a flavor for everybody's taste on the progressive side of the equation. And we think by doing that, we actually have the vast majority of the country. Because again, if you check polling and you check what people's wants are, they pretty much align with what we're doing. Our big problem is we have so much so much pressure against, there's so much of a mainstream media out there pushing against what we do and what people want.
Mm-hmm.
What do you attribute that to, that disconnect, the fact that so many people believe that the media is a liberal elite when the truth is that it is a corporately financed, owned, and operated money-making machine that has not a whole lot to do with truth per se, or certainly not a whole lot to do with progressivism in any way?
As the fourth estate, that is necessary, right? The same way the Republicans had to disassociate we the people from government. In other words, when they say government, they try to make you believe it's some different entity. It's the same thing applies to we the people. We the people are the government. So how can we demean the government without saying we're demeaning ourselves? The same thing with the press as being the fourth estate. The press, given that it is the window into our what our government is doing, it is essential for them to take over the media. How best can they do that by first saying, or not take over the media, but bastardize the media? And how best can they do that by saying that is a liberal media and the things that it's saying it's catered to some liberal audience? That's not true. And in doing so, they malign this fourth estate and give this fourth estate some bias, and in giving it that bias, it then allows folks to no longer look at it as what it really is. Now, the truth of the matter is the media has never been liberal. The media has always been, the media has always depended on the corporatocracy for its funding.
Yeah.
How can something dependent on the corporatocracy for its funding, the corporations and all these guys come out? The advertisers.
Right.
How can they ever be considered an organization for the people? Unlike a KPFT, who is funded by the people it represents. And that whenever we're given our spiel, right? I mean, that's what we always say. And that is, look, the difference between a KPFT and a mainstream media is that you fund us. We owe it to you.
Yeah. Big difference.
KPFT is We the People.
We the People.
In this mid-marathon edition of KPFT's Open Journal, this hourly show, 6 to 7 p.m. on Monday evenings, this labor of love where we have conversations with people we consider that you ought to know a little bit better, a little bit about what makes them tick. And before we get back into talking about some of the topical, political, and moral issues that we face, I wanted to visit with our guest, Egberto Willies, producer and host of the Politics Done Right program on KPFT. Just get back into who you are, not what you do, not what you're doing, not what you're concerned about right now, which is a lot, but where you come from, what makes you tick, why you are Egberto Willies today. You're a Panamanian American. Yes. Okay. So where did you grow up? Where did you study? How did you evolve into the Egberto Willies who sits in between my ears right now?
Okay, where did I grow up? I actually grew up in I'm a legitimate Panamanian citizen, or original Panamanian citizen. Went to school in Panama. My first 10 grades were actually in a Latin American school, both Spanish and English spoken fluently. And the last 2 years, we went to an American school in Panama in the 11th and 12th grade. Came over here to the States, believe it or not, on a
it's hard to say it.
On a music scholarship. Music scholarship, always knowing I was going to be an engineer.
What was the musical instrument that you rode that scholarship on?
Tuba and the bass guitar.
Really?
Wow.
That's wild.
See, we're peeling back the curtain on
tuba
Egberto
and the bass
Willies.
guitar. And then I found out that I was a very poor marcher in the marching band. you know, and they kind of let me go from the tuba, and then I did the bass guitar, and they realized that I wasn't the best reader of music because I played music by ear. And the young lady who came to Blinn College, which was the first school I went to, Brenham, Texas, was the one who said, okay, she wasn't there to play the piece. So, but anyhow, and then I went to UT. I stayed 1 year at Blinn, and then I went and got my engineering degree at the University of Texas, Austin. I was always politically active on campus. I was one of the ones, sometimes we were in the beret and the boots and telling the University of Texas, it was time to divest from South Africa. Apartheid must die. I asked my pastor then, I was in a church, and I said, hey, I need you to come and march with us because we're going to get folks out of this. And when he decided to tell me that Jesus was never really against slavery, I decided to give up on religion at that point. And I became a humanist thereafter. That's it.
How did you end up in Kingwood?
In Kingwood, I researched all the school districts, and it ended up that the Humboldt School District and the Katy School Districts were the two best school districts in town. And I went to Katy, and then I went to Kingwood, and I fell in love with the trees. And
the livable forest.
The livable forest. And
as opposed to the overbuilt rice floodplain.
Right. So then I decided, okay, this is where we are going to have my daughter go to school.
Oh, nice.
You know, so.
Good pick.
Mr. Egberto Willies, our special guest here on the Open Journal, KPFT, the Mighty 90. We are hip deep in our fund drive, but there's a lot of important things we want to spend time talking to you about. There's a guy downtown right now. We both have issues. Most people I know have issues involving that. There's a caravan of thousands upon thousands of people. There were people risking their lives to march on America, it appears. You come from down in that part of the world, my friend.
Yes.
Tell me how you feel. What does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? And how does that feel?
First of all, you know, what is interesting is, unfortunately, because most Americans don't have the time to learn either the history of what corporations and government are doing throughout Central America, South America, and to put it bluntly, the world. They don't understand that a lot of the problems with these people migrating to the United States has a corporate component and has a government component. In other words, some of the policies that we support in the United States against these countries create the problems that they have there. But that notwithstanding, Americans are the pictures that you see on TV right now with thousands of people on a bridge walking. And, you know, I mean, normally Americans would say, wow, if people are trying to walk to freedom that way, oh my God, we have to help them out. But these are a whole bunch of brown people walking from Central America, walking from these places, and somehow they have in the psyche of many Americans, not all, but many Americans, they have some substandard, some second tier level of humanity. So Trump is able to use that, the carnality within our minds, the fear within the minds of a whole lot of people, into looking at these folks as a threat to the United States. And he ties that with terrorism, and he ties that with MS-13. This is actually, believe it or not, the October surprise. One of the October surprises, actually. This is one of the October surprises. But I want to qualify something that I said here, because for all the folks that are listening right now, my white brothers and sisters, guess what? You're not the only anti-immigrants. I was talking to, I was just saying earlier that black folk and all the other kinds of folks in this country all have a anti-immigrant component in there. A couple of shows ago on my Politics Done Right show, I actually had one call in. And he was talking about the issues of immigrants in his community, being a part of his community, but not being a part of his community. So there are really issues of immigrants all throughout the country that is completely not race-based. And I think we do a disservice in this country when we just make it look like one set of people are the ones that are anti-immigrants, because we don't look at the real story. And in not looking at the real story, we allow a demagogue like Trump to actually peel people off. And when I said that was one of the October surprises, believe it or not, I don't hear the pundits talking about it on TV, but he's also going to peel a lot of folks that we consider progressives if we don't knock it on the butt right now and let people understand the pathology that's occurring right now, because what it is we're going to leave it to their thoughts and not making the positive narrative as far as these people are concerned. You know.
So one of the October surprises, Egberto.
Yes, just one of the October. The second October surprise is the Russian deal, right? This stuff about him jumping out of the Russian treaty, it's a game. Donald Trump, my brothers and sisters that are Trumpists, you know I love you, but the truth of the matter is your man is actually owned by the Russian oligarchy, and the Russian oligarchy is owned by Putin. Does that give you the chain? Donald Trump,
command, right?
Right. Donald Trump could never get a loan from a United States bank. He cannot. And the mere fact that he is successful in getting people to fund him, and these people being substantially Russian, should speak volumes. That near the election, why President Obama knew that the Russians have a level of cheating in the ballistic missile, in these treaties. But we do it as well, okay? Now, we all know that, and we play the game. There was no reason for Donald Trump at this point in time, a few days before the election, a few weeks, 2-3 weeks before the election, to come out and say, oh, I'm getting out of this treaty. What he's trying to do is two things. He's trying to say, I am not a stooge of the Russians, but we know Putin gave him permission to say that. And number two, he wants to look strong. Democrats are not seeing that the Russians are pulling the rug from under us. And in doing so, he kills two birds with one stone. He looks strong. And at the same time, he looks like he's no longer the stooge of Putin. And that argument that's been used against him and the Republican Party for appeasing him, Núñez in California and others, they get a chance to say, you see, how could he really be a stooge? And the reason we're defending him is that this was a liberal prank against him. You know, so I mean, it's sort of a convoluted thing, but it works in people's minds subliminally. And when they go to the polls and they have to make a decision, they're going to say, great economy, which it isn't. It's an economy based on a sugar high. But they're going to say what they know today. And the instant in time, it's great economy. The president may really not be a Russian stooge. And he's going to protect us from those brown people coming over at the border. That could include MS-13 and a few Middle Eastern terrorists. And while to those of us in the know, it seems like people not going to fall for that.
People do.
People fall for that.
Yeah.
And that is my big concern about this election going forward, and why I think independent media, us, all of us, because you're not going to hear a lot of this. I heard a snippet of this on MSNBC, and then they quieted it down for a while. I heard a snippet about 2 weeks ago. I had said that Donald Trump, when we had the big crash of the stock market, when it lost 1,400 points in 1 week, I had made this video saying about 2 or 3 weeks ago that when that happened, Donald Trump is going to say that is a result of people believing there is going to be a blue wave. Ironically, today, one of his advisors came on MSNBC and said that is not advisors, but people that go into the White House and go in there, said that the talk is, if there is any kind of tanking on the stock market between now and the election, they're going to blame it on the fear of having a blue wave to counteract a blue wave.
Potential of a blue wave.
So, I mean, there's so many things going on right now, and I don't think the Democratic Party, the establishment part of the Democratic Party, has a clue other than sitting quiet and trying to do what the Houston Oilers did back against the Buffalo Bills. And that is, you remember that?
Choke.
Yes.
Badly. Egberto Willies here on the Open Journal program, Mondays, 22nd of October edition. Here, midpoint of our membership drive, our fund drive, KPFT's fall marathon. I'm Duane Bradley.
And I'm Stephanie Coleman. There's always something nice about hearing the phone ring, right? It just sort of feels good for the soul. It's interesting as you talk about what you do to keep Houstonians and the sort of global listeners of KPFT informed. There is something extraordinary about just telling the truth and filtering through the media to an independent source that has nothing to gain from deceiving, but everything in terms of your value to gain in terms of telling the truth. So what keeps you motivated? What keeps you the fire inside of you to keep telling this narrative and keep educating and informing?
I have this crazy way of being that I never give up on anything. Mm-hmm. If I focus on something, that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And when I decided to focus on political activism, I tried to dot all the I's, cross all the T's to say this is what I was going to do. And, whether, you have your ups and downs, and you just go ahead and you keep fighting through those ups and downs, just like we have our ups and downs and raising some money right now and asking folks to call 713-526-5738 and give the show the support that it needs.
Yes, because we're 100% here volunteer-based.
Right.
Truly giving because it's the right thing to do. Right. So I think that is a wonderful number. That is 713-526-KPFT.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, we definitely could use it. And the numbers are always sort of strange. I sort of ask you as we look at this O'Rourke and Cruz narrative and who's winning and whose numbers are ahead and whose movement is where. What are your thoughts on that? And can we trust the polling numbers?
Personally, I don't think we can trust the polling numbers. And here's a guy who I believe in polls, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe that science. So you have to take, whenever you hear somebody say they don't believe the polls, it usually means they're losing, right?
Yes.
But in this case, something is happening with Generation Z. Mm-hmm. And Generation Z are those kids who went through the shootings and so forth that have never voted before. So pollsters don't know how to poll them. Right. So let's say they are going to be ultimately 2-3%, that they can change the vote by 2 and 3%. Mm-hmm. And then let's say the millennials come out a bit more than they do, and the model is wrong. I was speaking to Celesta, the pollster, the Democratic pollster, I was at Netroots, and I was speaking to her, and she said that they just don't know what the model should look like. And she is one of the top pollsters in the country. Yeah. And I can't believe I can't remember her name right now. But I mean, she said they just don't understand what the model is going to look like. So everything that you hear on TV, don't believe it. That we can't take the Senate, don't believe it. That we can take the Senate, don't believe it. That we're going to win the House, don't believe it. That we won't win the House, don't believe it. Because here's the deal. We don't know what the model looks like. And when you take those 1024 or 888 or however many sample polls, you have to hope you have a representative sample, and we don't know that.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a good problem to have. It's nice to have a non-predictable energy in the equation. That might be our saving grace.
I think the people are, last night after I left the studio, I was with the Conscious Mindset last night. And I went over there to Gray's, and you had Cody Pogue and a crew of students, Gen Zs. They camped out there last night. So I got a couple of interviews with the kids. I call them kids. They're between 18 and 24, the Gen Zs.
They are kids.
Yeah, they're kids.
They're kids.
We
need kids.
Right.
That's the future.
And they were passionate.
Yeah.
And I asked, what are you going to do when you leave here? I'm going to phone bank and make sure more of us at the U of H come out here to vote.
Nice.
If we have that, stand a chance.
Yeah, that's powerful. Even I was doing some work with the Beto office in Houston off of OST in that area, and I was in awe not only of how young they were, but how many they were and how many hours they volunteered.
Right.
KPFT is volunteer central, but those young energies were there from crack of dawn to midnight and back again, like really sort of dealing with everything through social media and engagement. They're quite sort of off the grid, but they are a powerful force.
I'm telling you, there's some energy that I haven't seen. There is a woman in Kingwood. She worked with Kingwood, they're Democrats, Jackie, who has been going house to house. She's made one of the most organized block walks I've seen. And I've seen this replicated over and over again. Jackie Hazelwood, kudos to you.
Mm.
I mean, just going out there and phone banking and going from door to door to door.
So let me dovetail here in the last minute we have with you, Egberto, and we need to have you back more often to explore and visit. Back when I was starting the program here earlier, I was talking about a visit from a Beto door knocker coming around asking if I was registered this way, that way, where was I leaning, what was I going to do, and am I going to vote early? Am I coming out on the 22nd, as Beto asked everybody, vote early, do it the first day. We want to like astound people with what happens on that very first day. And I told him I was old school. I was going to do it on the day of usually. And he explained to me why that was not a great idea, because they can see in the numbers based on who goes from what precincts and goes and votes early. It may take a day to get those numbers in, but they will know before election day that they don't need to worry about putting resources that are hard-fought dollars into making sure to whip out the Norhill neighborhood of the Heights when those funds could be better used to motivate U of H students to go out and actually do what they're supposed to do, because I've already done it.
Right.
And so that conversation with him last week was what motivated me to decide that tomorrow morning, you know, we're doing it.
Right.
We're going into either of the two near me, and so there's a value in that, and there's a great value in KPFT and the need for the KPFT and the need for the KPFT Open Journal to exist.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sorry that we're running short on time so soon. It feels like we just started talking.